was day 3. And I was starting to figure some things out about being able to tell what time it was since I didn't have a clock in my cell. And what I could do is I could look out that small window on my cell door and tilt my head to the right. And to the right were these big glass windows. And you could kind of see if it was sunny, dark, raining. You could kind of tell what the weather was. And I knew that if it was starting to get dark outside, it was getting close to shift change. So I knew it was around 6 o'clock. And then the other way I could keep time was I could ask, one of the deputies about what time it was when she would come through to do a check. And she was really nice, Deputy Bell. And so if she said, it's 8:30, that I knew that in 50 minutes she'd be walking around again. And so then I would know, well, okay, it's almost 9:30. So she came through after shift change and asked her what time it was. And she said, it's 7:30. And I said, well, are we not going to get to have day room time? And she said, I don't know. She said, we're having some issues right now and we're on lockdown. Well, I'd heard about lockdown from people who had been in jail or prison, but this was my first time experiencing it in there. And so I knew what that meant. Your door is shut, you're locked, and you're locked down. Nobody can leave. Nobody can come in. And so I hated it, because at least when I would come out of there, it gave me something to look forward to, and I could feel like I could breathe a little, and I could talk to some people I knew on the phone, and just stretch my legs and look outside through the windows. So there wasn't shit to do in that cell but listen to your own heartbeat and the sounds of unpredictable scenarios. And so I would just be like, God, get me the fuck out of here, please. In my mind, of course. And I cried. I cried so hard in my hands. And I was tired of not being able to do anything with all that pent-up energy. Because it just felt like all this energy and there was nowhere to put it. I couldn't clean. I couldn't exercise. I couldn't go out and hug a tree. I couldn't do anything to get grounded in there. And so I'm sitting there and all of a sudden I hear, church. Who wants church? So I jump up and I'm like, oh my gosh, heck yeah, I'm about to get out of here. I put my hand against the window and I was waiting to be let out. I thought I was going to get to go to a traditional church service. Well, until that past week, I hadn't felt close to God at all. And my life as a follower of Jesus and my spiritual life was dark. And my heart was hardened after losing my grandfather to cancer. And then, 2 years later, my brother to suicide. And that hadn't even been a year, losing my brother when I was in there. And so there was really nothing else for me to do in there but God. And so anyway, I could see the chaplain going from door to door. Chaplain, do you want prayer? And nobody would really accept anything that she was offering. And so I would see her give a blessing, and then she would walk on to the next door. And I just couldn't understand, why doesn't anybody want prayer in this place? That is all there is. I was pacing in my flip-flops, waiting on my turn. And the closer that she got to my window, the more I could see she just looked like this peaceful messenger of God. I could just see love just radiating through that heavy steel door. And I could feel it. I could feel it going into my heart. Prayer, she asked. I said, yes, please pray for me. And she said, here's a copy of our Bible study. And she said, and then you can fill out a request to receive a Bible from the chaplain's office while you're here. Then she slid this white piece of paper under the door, and I picked it up, and I scanned over it before she went to pray. Now, I don't quite remember what the prayer was that she prayed, but I do remember just crying a whole bucket of tears right there against that steel door. And I just wanted her to be able to open up that door and just hug me. I wanted to feel that safety from somebody I knew that I could trust, because I could feel it. And I hadn't had that in days. So after the prayer, she walked away and then went to the next door. Again, she was turned away. And on that piece of paper, I sat down and looked at it. It was the lyrics to the song Trust in You by Lauren Diego. And I knew that song. And I was able to sing it out loud since I knew it. So as I was, I'd just take the lyrics and I'd sing over and over and over. And then I remember during that time, as I was looking over that paper, I remembered a conversation I had with one of my healing friends while I was still in Mexico. And I had told her that I had been under investigation since November. And now it was February. And I hadn't heard anything else. So I didn't know. I didn't know they were going to take a warrant out on me once I entered into Mexico, into another country. And so, anyway, one of the things that she had told me was, you can't be on purpose with all that staying in the back of your mind. So, I knew that this was part of my freedom. And so underneath that, the lyrics were some scriptures, just to help give some validation about faith in God. And the first one was Proverbs 3:5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. The second one was Psalm 112:7. He is not afraid of bad news. The heart is firm, trusting in the Lord. And after reading through those scriptures, I turned over to the paper to see what was on the back. And of course, it was things like, Jesus is the only way to heaven. And it was some scriptures, around that they had put on there to kind of back that up. And, how eternal life was through Christ. So it was a little evangelical, but I needed something. And I began to feel something in my heart, something that I had lost years ago, and I knew the Spirit was calling me to return. And so I used that 2-inch pencil, and I wrote some notes that came up after I'd read those scriptures. And this is what I wrote. The Spirit of heaven is within us for us to share. It's for us to share with the poorest of poor, those in jail, those who are sick, those who are hurting, and those who are oppressed. Jesus is love. And hurt from losing people that we love can do a lot of damage to your heart if you don't have a strong spiritual community or some kind of faith. And there was a lot of damage to my heart. I was in so much pain. And I just remember when I lost my grandfather in November 2016. Actually, it was on the 19th, so it was today. It'd be 7 years. But I had no one from my church show up at my house and check on me from my church. Almost the whole year he was dying, and then after he died, and I was angry. I was so angry because I had spent 3 years. I had dedicated my life to serving and attending a church that I felt was my family. And I took that out on Jesus. So then I began to pray. And I just began to ask Jesus to please forgive me. And just to do whatever he needed to do. And whatever Spirit could do to heal my hardened heart. That I needed help. I needed spiritual help. I couldn't do it on my own. And I wanted to feel joyful again. And this wasn't my first prayer. The last one ended up happening during a huge crisis. And I felt the only place I had to turn was Jesus. And I feel like he saved me. I feel like I went through a lot of spiritual transformation and healing. And then I had promised then, you know what? I'll never turn my back on him. I'll never turn my back on my connection with the Christ Spirit and with God because of what people around me were doing. And then, there I was sitting there, had done it again. There I was. And so I wrote a little bit more on that paper. And then it was just too much to think about. I mean, I hadn't even eaten lunch yet. And here I was going through a spiritual transformation. Some woman had been brought in and she was coming off drugs. And all I could hear was her screaming and slamming her chair against the door. So I figured that this was probably the issue they were having and why we were on lockdown. But she was doors down from me, and I could just hear her saying, get me the fuck out of here right now. Please get me the fuck out of here. She said, I am scared. Help me. Listen to me. I can't breathe. And my blood ran cold because the things that she was yelling out loud and getting in trouble for were the same things that I was yelling in silent within my mind. And I could hear the deputy on the phone asking for medical. And I just wanted the yelling to stop. And I just wanted her to finally feel like she had been heard. But no one gave a shit about her emotions, mine, or anyone else in there that felt trapped. We didn't even get to walk out of our cell and pick up our lunch. They had some trustees and the deputy come to the door and pretty much slide it through the door. I took my paper sack, my milk I was never going to drink, and I sat on my bed and then kind of faced my desk and used it as a table. And the inmate was still screaming in the background, and there was my fucking sandwich again, hot, spicy bologna, and I just did what I'd been doing. Mustard and mayonnaise packet on the 2 pieces of white bread and an apple, and that's what I ate. And I'm going to tell you, I wanted to die in that cell. On that 3rd day, I was ready to die, and I meant it. And I looked around trying to figure out how I could use that hand towel to hang myself. I thought she's going to walk by and do a check, and then I've got 50 minutes. But they were smart. The hook where you hung your hand towel, if you put a little bit of pressure on it, the hook would fold down. So someone had thought that out pretty good. I guess they'd seen so much of it, they had to figure out some way to keep it from happening so much in there. So that was out. And all I could do was read those scriptures over and over again and sing that song, and and just trusting in the Lord over and over. I needed comfort, and there was no comfort in that place. I needed to know I was getting out of that cell to make a call, to call people who were loving and supporting me. And I began asking myself some serious questions about my relationships, about God, about what was going on with me. And so I wrote again that I can't be angry to the bone anymore, that I needed to realize I have to accept things for what they are and move on. And I could either let that experience traumatize me or transform me. And that just was coming up almost immediately after the thought of me trying to figure out a way to commit suicide. And there was a feeling of inspiration, and I just laid there looking at that ceiling, and I began reminiscing on some funny memories that I had with my grandparents when I was younger.